In May of 1931, the most notorious criminal in New York history was cornered in his girlfriend's apartment. Over 100 police officers surrounded the building, firing tear gas and machine guns into the top-floor hideout. When the smoke cleared and the police finally burst through the door, they found two-gun Crowley, bleeding, holding a pencil. Just before he was captured, he had scribbled a note. It didn't say, "I am a murderer." It said, "Under my coat is a weary heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm." Months later, in the electric chair, Crowley didn't express regret. His last words were, "This is what I get for defending myself."
Here is the uncomfortable truth. 99 times out of 100, no matter how wrong a person is, they do not criticize themselves. Not Crowley, not Al Capone, and not the person you argued with yesterday. Human beings are not creatures of logic. We are creatures of emotion, driven by pride, vanity, and an insatiable need to protect our self-esteem. This single psychological reality is the foundational argument at the heart of How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Carnegie realized that if you try to navigate human relationships using force, criticism, or raw argument, you are attempting to break the laws of human nature. But if you master the hidden mechanics of human motivation, you unlock an almost unfair advantage in life. The first law of human interaction is simple. If you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. Criticism is useless because it puts a person on the defensive and immediately forces them to justify themselves. It wounds their pride and arouses resentment without ever changing their core behavior. Even Abraham Lincoln learned this the hard way. Early in his career, Lincoln publicly ridiculed his opponents in local newspapers until a sharp-tongued politician challenged him to a duel with broadswords. Lincoln stood on the edge of a muddy riverbank, facing potential death, all because of a sarcastic letter. From that day on, Lincoln swore never to criticize anyone again. During the Civil War, when his generals failed him catastrophically, he withheld condemnation, asking himself, how would I have acted under the same pressure?
So, if criticism fails, what actually moves people? There is only one way under high heaven to get anyone to do anything, by making them want to do it. Sigmund Freud called it the desire to be great. John Dewey called it the craving to be important. Notice that word, craving. It is a deep, gnawing human hunger that is rarely satisfied. Most people go through life starving for genuine recognition. This is where most people confuse appreciation with flattery. Flattery is counterfeit, shallow, and comes from the teeth out. True appreciation is sincere, unselfish, and comes from the heart. Steel magnate Charles Schwab was paid $1 million a year not for his technical knowledge of steel, but for his ability to arouse enthusiasm in people through lavish praise and heartfelt appreciation.
And that brings us to the ultimate secret of influence. To persuade anyone, you must first arouse in them an eager want. When you go fishing, you don't bait the hook with strawberries and cream, even if that's what you love to eat. You bait it with worms, because that is what the fish wants. Yet, in everyday life, we spend all our energy talking about what we want. Nobody cares what you want. People care about what they want. The only way on earth to influence another person is to speak about what they desire and then show them exactly how to get it. When you merge your goals with their underlying desires, resistance evaporates.
Once you understand these foundation stones, Carnegie lays out 6 immediate behaviors that make people instinctively draw toward you. First, become genuinely interested in other people. A dog makes a living purely by loving you without asking for anything in return, which is why everyone loves a dog. Second, smile. A genuine, warm smile conveys, "I like you, you make me happy, I am glad to see you." Third, remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Andrew Carnegie built an industrial empire partly by naming his steel mills and locomotive factories after his biggest clients and competitors, instantly winning their loyalty. Fourth, be a good listener and encourage others to talk about themselves. Fifth, talk strictly in terms of the other person's interests. And sixth, make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. Take a moment to imagine applying this in real life. Carnegie tells the story of a hall keeper who was overworked and exhausted. Rather than demanding service, a visitor paused, noticed the keeper's dedication, and expressed quiet, sincere admiration for the immaculate condition of the building. The keeper's entire posture changed. He immediately offered personal tours, opened locked archives, and treated the visitor like royalty. Why? Because for the first time in years, someone satisfied his hunger for feeling important. When you give people a sense of dignity, they will move mountains for you. Now, what happens when opinions clash and conflict seems inevitable? Here's the twist. You cannot win an argument. You really can't. If you lose it, you lose it. And if you win it, you still lose it. Why? Because if you blow the other person's argument to shreds and prove they're wrong, you have struck a blow at their pride, insulted their judgment, and made them feel inferior. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Carnegie quotes an old tax inspector who was fierce and aggressive until a taxpayer stopped arguing, admitted the inspector's job was immensely difficult, and acknowledged his expertise. The inspector immediately relaxed, changed his tone, and wiped out the entire disputed tax charge. To win people to your way of thinking, you must master the discipline of diplomatic agreement. Never tell someone you're wrong. Saying you're wrong is equivalent to saying, "I'm smarter than you and I'm going to prove it." It provokes opposition before you even start. Instead, show respect for their opinion, and if you happen to be wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. When Carnegie was caught walking his dog without a leash in a public park, the police officer prepared to write a heavy fine. Before the officer could speak, Carnegie berated himself aloud. "Officer, you caught me red-handed. I was wrong. I have no excuses." The officer, accustomed to defensive citizens, immediately softened and told Carnegie to just let the dog run over the hill where nobody would see. When you need to bring someone around to your perspective, begin in a friendly way. As the old fable goes, the sun and the wind argued over who could strip a traveler of his coat. The wind blew ferociously, but the harder it blew, the tighter the traveler wrapped his coat around himself. Then the sun smiled softly, bathed the traveler in gentle warmth, and within minutes the traveler wiped his brow and pulled off his coat. Kindness and friendliness are always stronger than fury and force. Combine this with the Socratic method. Start by emphasizing the things on which you both agree. Get the other person saying yes, yes from the very beginning. Once the psychological pattern of agreement is established, it becomes dramatically easier to guide them toward your conclusion. And here is where the deeper narrative unfolds. Let the other person feel that the idea is theirs. People place far more trust in ideas they discover themselves than in ideas handed to them on a platter. Cooperate with human nature by asking questions, gathering their input, and letting them piece together the blueprint. Frame your requests by appealing to their nobler motives, their desire to be seen as fair, honest, and honorable. When newspaper publisher Ralph Spitzer wanted to stop local papers from printing unauthorized photos of children, he didn't issue legal threats. He wrote a letter appealing to their chivalry. You know how mothers feel about their children's privacy. The editors complied immediately. Finally, dramatize your ideas. Don't just state a truth. Make it visual, vivid, and felt. Eventually, life will demand that you lead others, correct mistakes, and guide behavior. How do you change people without giving offense or arousing resentment? Carnegie provides a masterclass in leadership. Begin with praise and honest appreciation before addressing a fault. Call attention to mistakes indirectly, and talk about your own mistakes first before criticizing the other person. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Say, "What do you think of this?" rather than "do this." Always let the other person save face. Praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to, and make the fault seem easy to correct. When you make the other person happy about doing what you suggest, you cease to be a boss. You become an authentic leader. When you step back and look at all these principles, you realize the grand reframe Dale Carnegie wants us to see. Influence is not about manipulation, tricks, or clever social hacks. True influence is an act of radical empathy. It is the conscious decision to step out of the narrow confines of your own ego and inhabit the minds and hearts of the people around you. When you shift your fundamental orientation from "what can I get out of this person" to "how can I make this person feel valued and understood," every door opens. The world is full of individuals seeking selfish advantage. The rare person who unselfishly tries to serve others has an enormous advantage. They have no competition.
Starting today, pick one conversation, just one. Stop yourself before offering a sharp critique or demanding your own way. Pause, smile, remember their name, listen deeply, and offer one piece of sincere, heartfelt appreciation. Watch how their eyes light up and their defenses fall. Because in a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, the quiet power to understand others is the ultimate superpower.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.